And this morning, we also have our very special guest in the studio. We have Deveo Okorie. Good morning.
Good morning,
At
Lagos.
Deveo Okorie on Twitter, you can find him there. Also, we have Mr. Gbolahan in the studio.
Eku,
Oh,
Ekabo, Buhari.
yes, Ekwe Kabubari.
Yes.
Good
Good
morning, Gbolahan.
good morning, Lagos, and good morning, Kayode. Good morning, Ayo.
Good morning, Gbolahan. For our non-Yoruba speaking listeners, Ekabo Buhari just simply means welcome. Welcome.
Welcome, Buhari, Mr.
Welcome,
President.
Buhari.
Yeah.
Ekabo Buhari. You all know Eku is part of
You can find
Yoruba
Gbolahan up on
lingua.
social media, by the way. He's at Mr. G Quest on social media.
All right. Okay. So if you'd like to join the conversation this morning, you can go onto YouTube. We're actually streaming live right there. So please look for us at Smooth 981 FM on YouTube and watch what's going on behind the scenes. And you can also send in your comments and contributions via that platform as well. On Twitter, we're at Smooth 981 FM. Please use the hashtag FreshlyPressed981. On the WhatsApp platform, it is 0809 4440981. You can send your comments to WhatsApp and we will be reading them out once you as you send them through. Okay, let's go and dive in straight into our stories for today. The first one, I'll touch on this one and I'll come to you, Devo, for this one. Buratai talks tough on terrorism, banditry. This report is from the Guardian newspaper and it reports that the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukur Yusuf Buratai, has said that the Nigerian Army will deploy maximum intelligence to tackle the scourge of banditry and terrorism ravaging the nation. In recent times, Devo, we've talked here on Freshly Pressed about the different incidences in Katsina, in Kaduna, recently in Gombe, and in some parts of Lagos as well. What's your take on this story, please?
Well, this is a season of action. Um, when you say that Buratai talks tough, basically, he listed, um, as I would say, sound bites. He first of all mentioned that the army had done well in the fight against terrorism and
Yes.
insurgency, and that they will continue to protect the territorial integrity of Nigeria. He went ahead and said that there's a collaboration among the agencies and sister agencies to
Yeah.
ensure that they finally sanitize areas that the criminals have been operating.
Yeah.
Now, whilst we have heard less of terrorism, we're now hearing more of banditry. One wonders which is actually worse. But many questions need to be asked because at this point in time, Buratai is promising maximum intelligence because this is actually the real issue. This is where the security matters and the capacity to be able to deliver safety lie. How intelligent are our security forces?
Yes.
Now, my only issue, whilst some other people have chipped in as to what the reasons for this banditry are, like Shil Sunny, he mentioned that this was the caused by northern leaders.
No, so Sheon Sani, just for clarification, is
Yes.
the member representing Kaduna Central Senatorial District at the National Assembly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now he said he blamed it completely on the northern leaders, while another person that's during Gwarin Chukwu
Mhm.
blamed it on the attack. That's the incessant attacks that have taken place
Yeah.
on political leadership in terms of their inability to settle scores without bringing in their people into calamity.
Yeah.
However, um, uh, I believe some things need to be done going forward. One, we need to review the security architecture of this country. Um, yes, the army has done, I mean, the military has done a few deployments here and there.
Mm.
We need to begin to see a change in tactic. Two, should it really be the army
Mm.
that or the military that's actually at the forefront of internal security? That in itself is a big lacuna that just says outrightly that is a complete, how do I call it, a bad report card on the police, who are actually supposed to be the internal weapon and enforcer of the law. Now, where the military,
What would you not say, Devo? I know you talk about the fact that the police should be spearheading this, but would you not say because of the due to the peculiar nature of security situation in Nigeria, the military has been invited to support the efforts of the police.
The military has been invited. Neither does that state whether that is the best strategy towards dealing with it. Because we know that when you speak of intelligent capacity and security operations, it's not so much of brute force. It's about knowing those who were behind some of these banditry, the kidnapping, the armed robbery, the killings and the massacres that have taken place on a social cultural level. Because sometimes we do understand that the root to some of these issues are not just simply because some people were being cruel. It had to do with some mindsets or some people who were sponsoring them who need to be nipped in the bud. Now, two, we also need to look at the civilian participation, because if the land, that is, Nigeria, has become ungovernable due to the rise in crime, we, the citizens, need to play a heightened role, an increased role in ensuring that we're looking after one another.
That's right.
This is the time that we begin to tag ourselves and say, "Oh, you stay awake now. I will be on the lookout now." I mean, it has played the civilian JTF has played a high level of contribution to ensuring that the insurgency was brought down. Then lastly, we all have to ensure that we maintain vigilance in this time and season. Watch our children, watch our wards, ensure that we teach them the right things, ensure that we are working together with the security agencies in times like this, because it's just amazing that just after an election, crime and insecurity has almost picked up in every area. And at the end of the day, until we join forces, we're not going to see any peace or stability in our land.
All right, thank you very much, Deveo. Now, you're talking about the police at 9 o'clock, during Lagos Talks 981. We'll be having some delegation from the police, and we'll be talking about the insecurity situation in the nation, as well as areas around police welfare and kidnapping talk. So it's a discussion you definitely want to be a part of, Lagos. If you'd like to tune in, it's at 9 o'clock, and we will be opening the phone line at that time for you to get your questions through to the police authority. Next question, next story. I'll stay with you for this one, Deveo. My next administration will pay more attention to health education. Now, this promise was made by the president, Muhammadu Buhari, yesterday, saying that apart from the focus of his administration on security, economy, and war against corruption, which we can identify as the key sectors he focused on in his first term, his second term administration would pay greater attention to education and health. What's your take on this story, please?
Well, sometimes I don't like discussing things that are past due. Funny enough, they've won an election, and what that means is that the electorate has put again their mandates within the president to carry out the dividends of democracy. And in this case, even though he spoke about sound bites as to what he would do, these are the questions we need to start asking. Security, economy, and corruption, yes, was the first time. And when he mentioned that greater attention would be paid to education and health, I still wonder what that sounds like. Now, the questions I want to hear are, what is the campaign mandate for the next level? I remember the campaign was the next level. Yes. What does this mean? How does this translate into general well-being for each Nigerian at their different levels in their different states? Do we have a 2-point agenda? Is it a 7-point agenda, or 4-point or 10-point agenda? I think that the administration needs to lay out clearly so that Nigerians can understand where we are going and when we intend to get there, what is to be expected within the next 4 years.
Do you think, Deveo, that these two areas should be top on his priority in terms of, do you think, I mean, he's talked about security, the economy, has he done well enough to move away from that to then focus on health and education? Or perhaps he ought to have started from there before going on to economy, security, and of course,
well, I mean, like I said, we're discussing whether he has done well or not. He's been elected in again. Therefore, he still needs to run the country.
Yes.
Whichever way they have deemed so. And this is why I'm asking for a clear picture as to the roadmap. Where are we going? What does the next level mean? Now, two, I mean, we also need to ask questions. Do we have a commensurate budget to match whatever mandates that the next level means? If you remember the first time, they were promised a so million number of jobs. Did those jobs come to bear at the end of the day? But we are going to live in this within the next 4 years. Does the next 4 years mean that we're going to tighten our belt even further,
Yeah.
given the fact that government is not as buoyant as they should be to be able to meet up with this? Who are the drivers? Have we started discussing, because the president himself cannot be in all the ministries and departments and agencies at the same time? Who are going to be the next level ministers
Yeah.
that are going to drive the next 4 years mandate on behalf of government?
Mhm.
I, for one, would say, can we have a one-point agenda? Deliver just one area. If they deliver transport, if they deliver security, if they deliver the fight against corruption, I think Nigeria will be very fine.
All right.
Let's see commensurate improvement in at least one area.
All right. Thank you very much.
for
We'll
that
take
one.
this comment from B. Adeboye on WhatsApp.
This one says the president's pledge that greater attention will be placed on health and education in the next 4 years should ordinarily reflect in the budgets. I'm not sure he intends to commence action in 2019.
All right, thank you very much for that, B. Talking about the president, well, before we go on to the state visit, let me come to you, Bola, for this one. Nigeria's 24 trillion naira debt still sustainable, federal government insists. Now, the Minister of Finance, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, has said that Nigeria's debt, which currently stands at about a whopping 24.3 trillion naira, is still within sustainable limits. She said that the country's debt, which is about 19% to the gross domestic product, was still low compared to Ghana, Brazil, South Africa, Egypt, and of course, Angola.
Yes. Well, I mean, this is a topic that we've been having for quite a while now. If our debt level, which is currently standing at about 24 trillion naira, is sustainable, I'd like to just cast our minds back anyway. And I'd only just be talking about a year back. As at June 30th, 2018, our debt stock was actually 22.3 trillion naira. So within a year, we've actually accumulated about 2 trillion naira in debt. Just within a year. And of course, I'm not even going to go as far back as the 4 years of this current administration or so, because if we were to go back to that, then I mean, it'll be mind-boggling. But as it stands, yes, when we compare our debt stock to that of Ghana, Brazil, South Africa, and Egypt, which our debt stock is currently at 19% to GDP.
Yeah.
No, yes, ours is reasonable compared to the rest of the African countries and also the South American countries as well too. But the issue and the topic of discussion has always been, can the government actually afford it? Because when we compare our debt stock to our GDP, GDP doesn't actually pay the debt. What actually pays your debt is actually government revenue. And when we're talking about government revenue, how is our government revenue compared to our debt profile? That's when we should be talking. What our government revenue actually as at present as well to currently stands at about 6% of GDP.
Okay.
Is what the government actually gets in terms of when we compare to GDP. So invariably, we aren't actually earning enough. The government isn't actually earning enough to pay for the debt. Yes, which is what she's actually talking about in this article as well, that we're not generating revenue. So the issue is actually revenue, no doubt. Government isn't actually generating enough revenue, and they've been working at it, trying to generate as much revenue as possible by increasing the taxes and ensuring that we increase the tax bracket as well too. And that's what the government is working on. But how far have they gone with this? We haven't actually made much progress.
Just very quickly, Gbolahan, before we move on to the next story. How better do you think the government can work or act to increase their revenue generation? I know they're big on tax at the moment.
Well,
but what other areas? What other things are they not exploring?
When you're looking at increasing government revenue, it's not necessarily by forcing people to pay. It's by allowing people to see the dividend of democracy. You know, when the roads are being constructed, when the healthcare system comes and people are seeing the benefits of their taxes, they're more inclined to want to pay their taxes. But when people don't see the benefit of this, then it becomes a little bit more difficult for people to pay for the taxes. There's no incentive to want to pay. So you need to encourage, you need to do a lot more. You know, we need to see a lot more where the government is spending the money, infrastructure-wise, healthcare-wise, education. Money needs to be spent. Yes, we do know.
We
need to feel the impact.
All right. Thank you very much, Gbolahan, for that. Now, Diva, I'll come to you for this. Anxiety as Lagos shuts down for Buhari's visit. This is in the Guardian newspaper, talking about the presidential state visit to commission some projects here in Lagos State. We have been warned of incidences of traffic jam, and people have fared menace on Lagos roads. Maybe it heights today after the respite from the Easter holiday because the president is in town.
Bagam, bagam, bagam. Everybody come inside. Well, I mean, it should always be an exciting moment when the president of the country comes into your town.
Yeah.
And what is objective this time? I think the governor wants to leave a little legacy of himself and his actions in terms of infrastructure before he goes. So there are four places that he'll be commissioning around the Ikeja zone. One is the 10-lane airport road. For those who have been on it, it's really cool.
Very.
I mean, I'm at least for the first time, you don't have to be ashamed coming out of the airport. It's a real cool drive.
Well,
Okay.
it's relative. Maybe when you step out of the airport, after you stepped out of
Yeah, when you drive out
you
now,
drive out.
yeah, it's a real cool drive.
Until you get to Oshodi.
Yes, and let's remember what happened in that case. It was
Yeah.
a federal road, but there was a partnership between the state government and the federal government for Lagos to take it over, and then with time, Lagos is paid back. Now, secondly, he'll be commissioning the 170-bed maternity hospital at Lasut. We do need maternity hospitals. The one on Lagos Island is insufficient to cater for the birth rates, especially here, the largest black city in the world. Now, there's also the 120 mass transit buses that have been lying down for quite some time. Hopefully, we hope that they will hit the roads with this commissioning. And then Wakanda-like structure at Oshodi. That's the multi-level bus exchange.
Yeah.
Take Oshodi into the 22nd century. Hopefully, that will come on stream. Now, what is very peculiar, as many people anticipating, one is first apprehension, because usually presidential visits come with a bit of traffic jam.
No, bit is putting him out.
Oh yes. Let's go there. Even up to the island, there will be police checkpoints
Yes,
where
there'll
there
be
will be
ripples.
blocking roads, there'll be ripples, and sometimes you wonder, is this necessary? That one man should cause so much havoc on a metropolitan city like Lagos too.
Well, not just one man. Sorry to interrupt. It's he's the number one citizen of the nation. So just to
clarify.
Yeah, but
But
if you
he's
look
still
at,
one man though.
yeah, one man. If you look at the visit, it's a working visit. This
Yeah.
is the 21st century. We need to understand that the country should still work in spite of his presence. I mean, I expect his presence to boost the economy, not to stop it. And we're just coming out of a holiday, so the cost to the Lagos GDP is quite high. Secondly, some are saying that instead of going to those places in Ikeja, that he should have come to Apapa, to see what's going on there. Maybe citing the truck gridlock. He might say one or two things, or like he did last time by sidestepping the Badagry Road and flying a chopper. Maybe he should take the Badagry Road, and maybe some respite would come to Lagosians who have suffered too long on those. But anyways, Mr. President, you're welcome. I hope to be there if God grants me grace to receive you, just like every other Lagosians. Let's go there.
All right. Thank you very much, Deveo. We'll read a few comments and then we'll go on to the next story. Good morning, Smooth. Finance Minister is trying to create rooms for increasing Nigeria's debt by her statement. What is the outcome of the funds they have borrowed? She should know that there are some Nigerians who cannot be fooled. And then we have this one here from YouTube. Chinedu Chimuba says, why can't the president start focusing on education now? Why wait for second term? Is he still not the president? Why are they shutting down governance till the second term?
Okay, so this next story comes to you, Gbolahan. It's from the Vanguard newspaper. It says NNPC partners customs DPR to curb cross-border fuel smuggling. Now, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, the Nigerian Customs Service, and also the Department of Petroleum Resources, DPR, yesterday entered into an agreement to inaugurate a joint committee to tackle growing incidents of petroleum product smuggling across the nation's border towns. I mean, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, my thought about this is now today, I mean, this is not the first time that we've been hearing stories of smuggling of our petroleum products across the border, and I wonder why we need to have a joint task force that has been set up, which is between the DPR and the Nigerian Customs Service. I mean, this should be a given already. What should have been done long ago in preventing people from smuggling items across the border, and of course. Well, this is nothing new. When we're talking about NNPC, there's been so much outcry for so many years about how many liters of PMS that Nigeria actually consumes a day. And currently, I think we're currently consuming about 55 million liters a day.
Okay.
And it's amazing as well to see that since we've had a price increase in 2014 or 15, it was when we were selling at 87 naira a liter to 145 naira a liter now. We haven't actually seen that reduction in the volumes that is actually being consumed on a daily basis. What we're even seeing is an increase. So that is mind-boggling. And when you look at it economically, that doesn't make any sense. When prices go up, you see a decline in the volumes of items that are being used. The only explanation for it could possibly be, of course, people smuggling the petroleum products across the borders. And when you look at that, and that makes a lot of sense, because when you cut across the border, this article actually says as well too, part of the reasons for this smuggling is because of the high prices of petroleum product that is being sold across. I've managed to have traveled across the border once, and when you look at it, you will find out that you would see a lot of jerry cans that are being carried across the border.
Particularly, they make reference to the Senate borders.
Absolutely.
Because they say that, neighboring
They're selling more
countries
expensive.
more
I mean,
expensive.
when you look at the prices that they sell across the country in the neighboring countries, they're selling at about 300 naira or more per liter.
Hence the smuggling to
Yes,
those
so
countries.
there's an arbitrage advantage of carrying that across the border. But this article doesn't only talk about safeguarding the borders in terms of petroleum products. It also talks about rice importation
Yes.
into Nigeria. So it's interesting when we're saying that Nigeria is now consuming 90% of what we produce. But now we're hearing that, of course, there's a lot of
still being
smuggling of
smuggled
rice
inside.
coming through the semi borders. Why are they smuggling rice into the country if there's no other reason other than the prices are much cheaper and we're not actually producing enough to meet the demands in Nigeria?
So that means that the partnership between NNPC, DPR, and the customs, that means that it should form a strong alliance to put an end to this, or at least put a sizable stop to it.
Well, the other thing I would like to point out as well too is that we do hope that the Nigerian Customs Service will live up to the expectation and do their job as they do. Because sometimes you also do find out that there's some sort of collaboration or collusion as well with the security agencies. That does happen as well. And they tend to look away when such crimes are being perpetrated. So,
Thank you so much,
let's
Paula.
hope they live up to their task.
Alrighty, let's move on to our next story. This one is from the Punch newspaper, and it says here, group challenges CCT's power to remove public officers. Now, the Civil Rights Realization and Advancement Network has urged the Federal High Court in Abuja to interpret the powers of the Code of Conduct Tribunal to remove the occupants of certain public offices upon being convicted by the tribunal. Deveo?
Well, it's an error which some have highlighted because of what just happened with the past Chief Justice Adenuga's case. And here they are worried the fact that the CCT had such powers to be able to remove designated officials without two-third majority of the Senate. Okay, and in the state, in case of a state, you have two-thirds of the members of the State House of Assembly. Now, the 13 officials that we're referring to that require this by the Constitution: the President, the Vice President, Governor, Chief Justice, President of the Court of Appeal, Chief Judge of the Federal High Court, Chief Judge of the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory, then the Grand Kadi of the Sharia Courts, the Federal Capital Territory, the President of the Customary Court, the Chief Judge of the state, and same goes for in each state. Then also, yes, the Grand Kadi of the Sharia Courts, of the Customary Courts, and that of the state.
Okay.
Now, it's very simply stated. They are still questioning this right now. They said that the suit is marked is the Attorney General of the Federation, and I think we would be looking forward to see the government's position on this and how the CCT was able to wield such powers at the end of the day without following due process, because it has happened before in the state government where that was in Enugu State, where the justice removed the governor by a suit.
Okay.
Now, if this left unchecked, this could repeat itself in various cases. It's just like saying the CCT is able to ask the president to step down on some certain basis. And they're believing that the Constitution has been crossed in this action. But since it's a suit, we'll wait to see the determination of that.
All right, thank you very much for that one. Really quickly, we have messages. We're going to be taking a few of them just in a little bit. Let's get to them.
All right, Ken Wachuku from Surulere says, my friend told me their flight was delayed in Dallas for more than an hour because the President of the United States was visiting. I use US because the next thing you will do is to tell us how it is done in the US and UK. Please note that the life of the president is very important and he should be protected. Don't say the town is shut down because of just one man. He is the president, please. Then Informer from Ikoyi says,
doesn't have a business.
Not sure why we expect our ill-trained, ill-equipped, and barely paid police force to tackle the paramilitary forces that have been allowed to attack civilians. LOL, we have mega problems, and this is a military matter, but as usual, we are not taking it very seriously. And some comments on Twitter. Twitter has it that, what a country sad. Mr. President is coming to Lagos to commission projects that have not been completed. He should also come to a Papa Kiri Prison Road, Badagry Expressway. What a shame.
Okay, real quickly, let's head on to our next story. This one comes to you, Gbolahan. It's from Thisday. It says, NAFDAC raises alerts over fake anti-hypertension drugs. And I mean, the story goes on and on, though, but let's dive right into it.
Yeah, well, this statement was released by the Director General of NAFDAC, which is Professor Moji Adeyeye, and she was talking about the situation. This is not happening in Nigeria at the moment, but it has been found out in Cameroon that there is actually a drug which isn't what is actually is. So the drug is hydrochlorothiazide 50 milligram. That's what the packaging says. But inside the drug itself, it's actually another drug which is glibenclamide, which glibenclamide is actually an anti-diabetic drug. And hydrochlorothiazide 50 milligram is actually an anti-hypertensive drug. So what is actually going on is, of course, if you use that drug, you'd actually be getting a different effect to what you should be getting. So we've been warned that we should be on the lookout for this, especially for those that actually do use that particular drug. And there's been a NAFDAC number that has actually been given out as well, to that if you are using any of those drugs and you're worried about it, there is the batch number which has been given, which is 16G04, and also the manufacturing date on it is the 30th of the 5th. The manufacturing date is the 16th of 2017, and the expiration date is 30/05/2021. So if anybody is using that drug, of course, you should be at alert and make sure you get your medication from the authentic pharmaceutical stores and make sure that they are genuine drugs as well, too, with their approved NAFDAC number on it. So just be at alert. We don't have that in Nigeria at the moment, but just be as alert. That's what
thank you
NAFDAC
very
is trying to
much,
tell us.
Appreciate that. Just by way of mentioning, our next story is from Guardian. It says Nigeria needs cost-effective tariff for steady power supply.
Well, this was reported by the African Development Bank president, which is Dr. Akinomi Adesina, who visited the president and was actually talking about what we need to do if we want to get constant power. And there are two situations, or the two challenges that we're currently facing in the power industry. One of them is the cost-reflective tariff that needs to be adjusted, and the second one is also the issue of liquidity as well too in the system. Of course, we know those that are in that sector are really complaining about liquidity issues, and that's just because they're not charging the right amount that they should charge, which should make the business profitable. So what the president is recommending is that the government needs to look into this, and at the same time, the government, the president of the African Development Bank is also talking that they've also invested significantly in the transmission company of Nigeria as well. And if we need to see more investment come into the power sector, we need to do those two things, which is mostly cost-effective tariff, and encourage a lot more investment in the power sector as well too.
All right. All right. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. We see messages, but we're really out of time. But we want to take one comment from our YouTube.
Funsha Falarisha says, I wonder why when revenue regeneration is being mentioned, everyone's train of thought moves to taxes. What of government-owned enterprises? All right, thank you so much indeed for your comments and for being a part of the conversation. We see them. Unfortunately, we couldn't take all of them, but we do note each and every one of them. But thanks to our analysts today. Gbolahan, thanks at Mr. G Quest on Twitter, and of course, Deveo Okorie on Twitter. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation this morning. Lagos, don't forget, we have that conversation with the police come 9 a.m. during Lagos Talks 981. We will open the phone lines and just ask them questions and bring up issues that matter to you. This is Smooth Breakfast here on Smooth 98.1 with Kayode Bakerr.
Ayo Mairo Ese.
We'll be right back.